Let's talk about your sound. Everyone wants to sound great, and everyone knows whose sounds they love. Maurice Andre, Herseth, Mendez, and we all want to sound that way. So how do you make yourself sound great on the trumpet? Now, we are all very individual people physically, and we are all very individual people in the type of sound we are even capable of producing on the trumpet. Just like every vocalist has a completely different tone quality, every trumpeter has a completely different tone quality. Now, there are things you can do to make yours the best you can possibly be, and so let's address those things. First of all, you need to have a good balanced embouchure. You need to have it placed correctly in the mouthpiece, and my preference is that you have 2/3 lower lip, 1/3 upper. Now, that's not to say that there aren't a lot of really great trumpeters who do very well with a 50-50 placement. That works fine for them, and that's also very acceptable. The thing you don't want to do is have 2/3 upper lip, 1/3 bottom lip, which is associated with horn playing. Now, my first teacher happened to be my father, who was a horn player, is still a horn player, and I copied him. I emulated his embouchure, and my first several years of playing, I did 2/3 upper, 1/3 lower. When I got my first lessons in with Jimmy Burke, the famed cornet soloist of the Edwin Franco Goldman Band, he noticed my embouchure was incorrect, and he said, let's shift it a little bit so that you're 2/3 lower lip, 1/3 upper, so that you get the meaty part of that bottom lip, which provides the foundation for your high register. So I'm one of those fortunate types. I was able to adapt to that. I was young, pretty flexible. I was able to adapt to that in 2 weeks' time, moved my mouthpiece down a little bit so that I was using 1/3 upper, 2/3 lower. That was critical to me producing a good sound on the trumpet. The second thing is, obviously, you need decent equipment. You need a good mouthpiece. But mouthpieces are not the end all. Doesn't matter how great your mouthpiece is, it's still going to sound like you at the end of the day because it's dependent on how you produce sound. So I'm going to assume that you have decent equipment. You've got a nice trumpet. It's got a decent lead pipe. Your mouthpiece is not dented. If the mouthpiece is dented, if that shank is dented, you've dropped it a few times, and you've got a lot of dents in it, that's going to affect your sound. It's also going to affect your intonation. I'm also assuming that your lead pipe is clean. If that lead pipe is clogged with gunk, which happens pretty rapidly if you're playing a lot, that's also going to affect the way your air flows through that lead pipe, and that's going to affect your sound. Now, here's the most important thing about tone quality. It is directly dependent on your airstream. The airstream is the life's blood of all of your playing. I am going to operate under the assumption that you are breathing correctly, using correct diaphragmatic breaths. There are 1,000,001 videos on diaphragmatic breathing, so I'm not going to address that here. I will try to link one in the description that you can check out to make sure you're breathing diaphragmatically, because that's absolutely critical to a good sound. Now, if those things are all working, embouchure good, equipment good, diaphragmatic breathing good, the next thing you have to use is you have to make sure you're following through on your air on every single note you play on the trumpet. So something that I address with my students all the time is follow through on the air on every descending passage. Now, I don't care whether it's a scale passage and you're going down into a low A, low F, F sharp, whatever, you have to follow through with that air, even if you're playing at a pianissimo level. Now, what I try to do, and this kind of runs counterintuitively, and there's going to be people who say, that's not really what happens, and they could have a point. But from a psychological point of view, this is absolutely critical to my playing. I try to see how much air I can use on every single note that I play. Every single note. Doesn't matter whether it's loud, soft, high, low, tongued, slurred, whatever. I'm trying to see how much air can I get through the instrument to produce the fattest possible sound. So what does it mean to drive your air through a passage or follow through with a passage? Well, what that means is that your air stays exactly the same and steady throughout the entire phrase. You have to think of your air like water in a stream. There are things that interrupt that water as it's flowing downstream, rocks, twigs, whatever. Those can be our various articulations, dynamics, whatever. But does the water ever come to a dead stop? No, it doesn't. It continues through the entire pathway. That is exactly what our air has to do. So if you start envisioning your air as water through a stream or a brook or a river, whatever you want to do, that's going to help formulate the concept of driving that air. That air flows nonstop, uninterrupted. Well, it does get interrupted. It gets interrupted by our tongue. It gets interrupted by periodically if there's a rest. Obviously, the air stops. And but that's it, really. So start thinking of your airstream as water through a hose, maybe. And when you squeeze that hose, that's you tonguing. And you might start following through appropriately with your airstream. Try that out. I'll think of some more analogies to see if I can come back to this to help. But really, really think about your air as the foundation of a great sound and the foundation of all your musicality and basically all of your trumpet playing. Now, it's really the foundation of all brass playing, all wind playing, all singing. Any instrument that requires air from our bodies, we have to attend to the airstream and how we're breathing. So think about that. Check out the diaphragmatic breathing video I'll post to verify that you actually are breathing correctly, and practice this. See how it goes.